Mr. Speaker, will you please call the House to order?
The bill is passed.
We'd like to get a budget that represents the interests of the people who are standing here with me now.
To be part of the struggle to achieve a better society for all.
I'm very compassionate to what's happening upstate. And I'm very compassionate to what's happening downstate.
Hello and welcome to Assembly Update. I'm Liz Koenig. Today we'll be discussing some professional development opportunities our guest has been participating in. And joining me to discuss this is our guest, Assemblymember Walter Mosley, who represents the 57th Assembly District in Brooklyn. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So, you have been so busy. Even during the session this has been going on, you've been participating in a couple of fellowships. And you know, they always say, you know, every day is a learning experience. You learn something new every day, right. You know, blah, blah, blah. But this is truly something that you've taken on and been selected to do. And you could tell us about, first of all, the MIT Mel King Fellowship.
Yeah. Well, this is coming off the back end of John Lindsay CUNY Fellowship. I was part of the inaugural class, and so that ended early this year, and that overlapped with the MIT Mel King Fellowship. Mel King was the first African American to serve in the state legislature in the state of Massachusetts, and is a professor emeritus at MIT in their School of Urban Planning. And he created this fellowship a couple of decades ago, where he brings elected officials from all over the country. Sometimes he concentrates it from one particular city. And it's a year-long fellowship, and it's under the scope or the umbrella of cooperative economics, which was created in Mondragon, Spain. And we had an opportunity to go to northern Spain to visit the Mondragon School of Cooperative Economics to see firsthand how they have redefined what labor is and how it could be beneficial to not only the larger global labor market, but also to the individual laborer, which allows for them to have added stake in their work product. So it's really been an eye-opening experience for me, outside the scope of how we normally talk about how do we increase participation of people who've been historically underrepresented in the world of business, small business, global business. So we're looking forward to continuing to work with my colleagues who are other fellows from the Bronx as well throughout Brooklyn as our fellowship ends, and as we continue to take the practices we've learned and put them and apply them to real life situations and real life businesses, which I'm currently doing now with one in particular in business in my district, which moved to the Bronx, unfortunately, trying to bring them back to Brooklyn, as well as with taxi cab drivers and using the technology so that they can have their own shared economy through the cooperative economic initiative and philosophy. So it's been an interesting experience, to say the least, and probably one of the most fulfilling fellowships I've been a part of.
Now, you've also been selected to participate in the Henry Toll Fellowship.
Yes. This is a national fellowship. I was selected last year. I couldn't attend, but I suspended it, and I'll be going this year to northern Kentucky, outside Lexington, outside the University of Kentucky, and these are colleagues of mine throughout the country, and we talk about best practices. We talk about, the issues that they're facing in their respective houses and states, and how we can be helpful to one another. And then obviously talking to people from other sides of the aisle and other philosophical beliefs, both politically and socially and otherwise. And I've always found it refreshing as well as enriching to talk to other people from throughout the country about how they're dealing with issues that are similar to ours, but yet the dynamics are quite different at the same time.
And tell me about the Harvard Kennedy School, strategies for building and leading diverse organizations.
Well, I was talking to a bunch of young people yesterday. We were talking about John Kennedy and his philosophy on life in terms of getting the most and the best out of yourself, and how do you do that and the Focus and Courage book that he wrote when he was in his 30s was something that I kind of live by. And so for me to be a part of a program like this, a program that my mother was a part of when she was, a young professional, to go to the Kennedy School and to learn from some of the best and brightest professors, and as well as fellow students, is something that I'm looking forward to. But all these things is all about growth. It's all about getting to understand yourself a lot better as a professional and personally, and getting to be introduced to people of like minds as well as not like minds. And to find out, how you can become a better public servant and a better public official.
Let's move on and talk about a town hall. Public school segregation town hall.
Yeah, this is something that many of my colleagues have been talking about for quite some time in terms of the level of segregation in New York City. I think UCLA a couple of years ago released a report which showed that New York City was by far the most segregated big city public school system in our country, and that's appalling, given the fact that we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Brown v. Board of Education in 1954 ruling, which declared public school segregation to be unlawful and unconstitutional. But yet we are in the midst of living in a segregated society that we send our children to. So on one end, we want to talk about segregation. We want to teach them about the wrongs, the historical wrongs of segregation, but at the same time, they're living in a segregated 1.1 million populated institution, predominantly made up of black and brown children, but yet we as a city have found ways to have pockets throughout the 5 boroughs to be segregated. And to me, I think that's appalling, it's abysmal, and it's something that we should try to rectify. And I'm glad that we have now a chancellor who has confronted this, who has verbally talked about this, who has taken his own fair shares of criticism, but at the same time understanding that if you truly believe in something, you can endure the criticism because what you believe in is what you believe is the right thing to do. And so we're looking forward to having this conversation, having both sides, all sides represented at this town hall in an effort to kind of lead us and steer us in a direction of not just dealing with the specialized high school segregated issue, but also middle schools and lower schools, and how we can not necessarily eliminate segregation from a racial standpoint, but also discrimination in terms of how do we allocate resources, where do we allocate them, why and why not, and find out how we get some type of uniformity that is clear and of any type of bias, any type of discriminatory practice or beliefs. And that's really our ultimate goal.
It's really surprising to me to hear this about New York City schools, because it just seems like,
Yeah, it is surprising.
You take for granted that a place like New York City would do a better job with this.
Look, anytime you have my son had a harder process getting into middle school than he will have if he wanted to apply for the specialized high schools. We have a problem when it comes to the process by which we're seeing a disproportionate number of kids being excluded, but yet are just as talented, if not more so. That's something that we have to be honest with ourselves and realize that it's not necessarily the main problem, but it's part of the problem, which has helped to perpetuate this level of segregation.
Now, let's move on and discuss some travel that you have coming up, some very important trips that you're going to be taking.
Yeah.
The first one is to Las Vegas.
Yes, not for pleasure. It's a 3-day trip. I'll be going out to visit a hemp farm, a marijuana farm. As you know, one of the big issues that we're dealing with is that we've legalized marijuana use from a medical standpoint. How do we get to responsible adult use of marijuana in the state of New York? And I think the best way to find out how to do that is to go out and visit these hemp farms that are providing some of the product, that gets dispersed throughout our state, as well as in Nevada. And obviously it's been legalized in Nevada, I think, since last year. And I'll be going to a distillery as well as to the farm just to get firsthand knowledge so that I can take it back and share with my colleagues. And I'm sure some of my other colleagues are doing the same.
Now, you'll also be going to Rwanda, South Africa, Tel Aviv, all over.
Well, Tel Aviv is another trip where this is an international cannabis conference, CanX, and as many of my viewers know, Tel Aviv and Israel has always been on the cutting edge when it comes to research and development of a number of practices in business and otherwise. And this is again another example of how they're so far ahead of us. And what we don't want to do, we don't want to create a bill that becomes so outdated or so antiquated that compared to what's going on in the rest of the nation, we're not exceeding our possibilities or exceeding the potential growth of this industry from a global perspective. The trip to Rwanda, I just been introduced to some people who work with the Rwandan government, and they're looking to open their doors to business, particularly to minority and women-owned businesses in the West, to further their GDP, cultivate their economy, while at the same time cultivate the knowledge base as well as the skill sets of the people who live in Rwanda. So we'll be there and talk to other nations in the region, Congo, Benin, and otherwise. And then the trip to South Africa is a trip that I've been invited to in the past, and I speak at an international business expo where we talk about how do we build bridges between the continent of Africa and the various countries within Africa to the West and to other marketplaces. Obviously, I'm concentrating on businesses that work here in the state of New York, and how do we create opportunities of wealth building and access to capital that is available beyond the four walls of New York State and the United States. So that's always a good visit, and it allows me to expand my personal connections, which allows me to expand, obviously, potential opportunities for constituents who I have to represent in my district.
And you'll also be participating in national conference legislators.
Yes, in New York City, in Brooklyn. And look forward to welcoming all our colleagues from throughout the United States who will be coming to New York City and Brooklyn in particular to partake, and obviously we'll have robust conversations on what's happening locally within New York State and locally within their various jurisdictions, as well as what's happening nationally. So looking forward to that as well, as always.
It'll be nice to be able to host that instead of having to
Yes.
get on a plane.
Yes, yes.
With all this other travel you'll be doing.
Certainly.
So we're going to be talking to you, obviously, while you're out and about on all these trips. So
Correct.
we'll be able to keep your constituents updated on what you're learning and what you're seeing, and so
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to that too. That'll be interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Assemblyman Walter Mosley, who represents the 57th Assembly District in Brooklyn. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.